My name is RikFowle. I've been pretty much involved with the American Board institutions in Turkey all my life, because I was born in Istanbul in 1929 and spent my childhood there. And I might just mention in passing that I would be a fourth generation member of the family. My great-grandfather and his wife went from Thetford, Vermont to Ottoman Empire, first for language study, and then they settled in Kayseri, and this was in 1854, moved on to Talas later on. And their oldest daughter married my grandfather, James RikFowle, a Amherst College graduate, and they continued to serve in Turkey all their lives until their retirement, and they had to come back to the States. And my dad went to Union Seminary for a while and decided that he had the words, but he thought it was better to work as a business person, helping the mission, the schools, raising money and doing the administrative things. So he did that for many years until he retired in 1954. And then I came along, and after some checkered earlier years, decided I was interested in going back to work with the mission. And I had been studying in London and working on a history degree. But once I got back to Turkey, old friends who had known me and knew me as a mission brat back in earlier years said, well, why don't you come down and teach in Tarsus for a year? We need someone there. So I did so. And then fate intervened, and in the meantime I had met a very nice nurse from Gaziantep Hospital, Ermeline Nunn, and we became good friends, decided to put our lives together, and were married out at the Gaziantep Hospital in 1964. The next years, kind of a back and forth between Tarsus and Gaziantep and Istanbul. I won't mention all the dates, but you can see that working with the mission and in association with the mission has been a large part of my life. We came back to America in 1976 and worked back here until our retirements. So I suppose this is a case of sort of natural flow of family and interest and background concerns of that sort. I guess the decision to try to go work with the board was not an easy one, I think more for the board than for me, because I was not a very articulate person in terms of the buzzwords of the early 50s and this and that, but bless their hearts, they eventually decided to take a chance on me. And so that's how I got to work with the American Board. In terms of expectations and so forth, I think what I was just looking for was an occupation, a life that would be reasonably secure, no great expectations in terms of fame and fortune, but would be useful, be of good service. And as I said, when I went to work for Uncle Sam back in 1953, to try to do something to improve the relations between Turkey and the United States, which were pretty good at that time, but they haven't always been that good, and they go up and down. But we thought that this would be a good thing to do. So I loved the opportunity to go to Tarsus. I remember that I was not a very good teacher. I hadn't had any teacher training. It didn't matter in those days if you spoke the language, and if you had a passport, I guess you could work. And I was just very glad to have the opportunity. I have not been able to maintain any close relationships with students of that time, because we left Turkey in 1976 and 7, and I've not been back since that time. Would be nice to go back, but just hasn't worked out that way. What was special about the schools, perhaps, was that we made real attempts to have it more than just education. Of course, education has broad definitions. It includes a lot of things in that. But there were programs that were designed to try to get the students interested in social issues and social service. We had work camps that faculty and students would work with, go out to village bookmobiles, things of that sort. And it just was across the boards an attempt to perhaps carry out, at least for some of us familiar with the earlier history of the American Board, what good could be done and by what means. And we thought that was our job. We didn't find a great deal of individual support from people back home here when we were on furlough. I think they were looking more for the traditional missionary. I remember my wife being asked once, well, how many people have you saved this year? And her very accurate reply was, I'm still working on myself. And we thought that what we were doing was good work that would be appreciated, that there would be personal rewards, and we weren't so much interested in signing up people. The relationships weren't easy. In the 1960s, people will remember, there was the invasion of Cyprus. Lyndon Johnson was not popular in Turkey. Go home, Johnson! And there were some wonderful plays in those days. I remember going up to see one in Ankara there. And there was a lot of partisanship between the parties in Turkey. It wasn't a good time, but we always felt very happy, very comfortable, and very safe in Turkey. A few years later in Turkey, when there was a revolution of sorts, must have been early 70s, I guess, when we were at Gaziantep, there were riots in Gaziantep. The police and the military fled, and a lot of people were in the streets. There was a police station at the corner of the hospital property, which was burned. And we at the hospital didn't know what was going to happen next. We didn't have any idea at all. But nothing ever happened to us. Nobody ever came into the hospital or threatened us or said anything bad. And after that was over, I asked Turkish friends in the community there, how come this didn't happen? It would have been perfectly natural to come and ransack the hospital and so on, as they'd done with their own police station. And the people said, oh God, no, we wouldn't ever do anything like that. We know you people and why you were here, and you've been here for many, many years helping all of us. That would never happen. And that was one of the most rewarding things to hear in my life. I think I did a lot of growing up in Turkey. I hope I did. I matured somewhat as a person, I think. I've never felt particularly mature as a person, and often say people I never grew up, and perhaps that's true. But there were wonderful opportunities to do constructive things. From the hospital, of course, the Dr. Updegraffs and other people like that would run clinics. They'd go to the villages. Bookmobiles were important. We had a Türk Amerikan Derneği in, I don't have to translate for you guys in Turkish, I guess, in Gaziantep. And we used to volunteer to teach English down there. We had some students, and we felt a very comfortable part of that whole community. I have a couple of little things I want to mention about people that I met or worked with during these years. And one was a clinic nurse in Gaziantep. She was Armenian born and alive at the time of the events during the First World War. She saw her father drown, and she was taken to Gaziantep by a man and lived in his home and house for some years. Eventually got a position up at the hospital thanks to Dr. Dewey in the 20s, and worked for many, many years. One time up there, Dr. Dewey didn't know how to diagnose an illness. And Leda said to him, you know that, and what is the word I want? Ermeline? Well, you turned white. It's the disfiguring thing, like in the movies about biblical days and so on. At any rate, she took this person in. He was admitted to the hospital. She tended him until he passed, and it was the man apparently who had kept her all those years. That's her name, Sevinchli, I think, is just wonderful. She had not a unfriendly bone in her body. She loved people, cared for everyone. It was just a generosity of outlook and just heartfelt friendship and love that you wouldn't expect from anyone who had such a tough experience. The other one I want to mention is rather different, and I don't quite know how to express it. But in the course of my job at Antep, I had to go back and forth a lot by bus. And so I used to go over Gavurda and on to Adana and then up to Istanbul or wherever. And I remember coming back from one of those trips. It was wintertime, and we got snowbound on the top of Gavurda. And I had a very nice chance to chat with the driver at the bus. And he was a devout, faithful Muslim, and I hope I'm a fair attempt at a Christian. And we just had a wonderful talk about religion. And neither of us was making any attempt to persuade the other of their faults or our correctness or vice versa, but we were both just interested in knowing what made the other person tick, for better or for worse. And that was an unforgettable experience. There's nothing you could do. The snow was all over the place, the bus was off the road, it was cold as the dickens. But anyway, those are important things that I remember. I guess if I have any regrets about time spent in Turkey, it ended all too soon. I wish things could have gone on longer years. I never completely reconciled to what the changes that went on with the sending board in the United States, but that's the way it goes. Other people's wisdom, other people's priorities, other people's choices, and one must go along with it. So if all things had been equal, I think my wife and I would have been glad to spend more years in Turkey, but there wasn't that opportunity. Have not kept up very well with Turkish friends or acquaintances. I've been away from Turkey now for 35 years, have not been back, and I don't think we'll get back again, but I do like to stay in touch with teachers, and occasionally there's contact with students, and it's all been just such a wonderful life, and I'm just most grateful for it. Thank you.